Welcome to a new episode of Filmi Ladies. I am Beth, and with me as ever is co-host Pitu. And we are having technical difficulties this morning, but we'll do our best. So fortunately, Khan and his full-size, alter ego are here to help us because we are talking this morning about the early television work of one Mr. Shah Rukh Khan. We have both watched one series, and Pitu has also watched Doosra Keval, which I'm going to ask her to tell us about now.
I think that the technical difficulties are very symbolic of the episodes I watched, of the two TV shows I watched, because Doosra Keval was quite a slog. And for that matter, I would say that even though Fauji was fun, the print that I watched, I don't know what print you saw, but the print was so horrendous. Yeah, that at one point I was like, what am I even seeing? There was so much darkness on my screen. I was like, did my TV just die? Like, what just happened? So I was not in India when these two shows became like popular or whatever. I grew up in Africa, for those of you who don't know, and I only discovered Shah Rukh when Deewana came out. So I'd heard through the years about people who did grow up in India, and there was only that one TV channel, Doordarshan. And so, people were sort of like a captive audience and they would watch these shows. And that's really how Hema Malini saw Shah Rukh Khan in Fauji, and then she, cast him in Talash Na Hai or whatever, which ended up becoming his first film. But Doosra Keval, I think, was his third TV show that he did, because the first was Dil Darya or Fauji, and then there was Doosra Keval, and it's quite a weep fest, which makes sense if you think about the story. So Keval, played by Shah Rukh Khan, is this guy who lives in like a small village in Punjab with his mom and his sister. Cue all of the 80s movie tropes of, Andhi Behan Vidhva Ma, all of that. Although his Behan is not Andhi, but she's quite hysterical. And there are all these problems. And Keval has to go.
Is it better to be hysterical or Andhi?
I mean, I would just prefer a lack of hysterics, to be honest, but
that is too much to ask for.
They're just always crying, but it's so exhausting. And the trouble with these kind of movies is that I feel like a really shitty person, because the background music is telling me that I should feel bad for them. The copious tears running down their eyes are telling me I should feel bad for them. The sympathy that Shah Rukh Khan has for them is telling me I should feel bad for them. And yet I don't feel bad for them. I just feel annoyed. So it's possible that I'm just like a very bad human being. So I don't feel good about myself when I watch these kind of things. At one point, I remember yelling at the TV, "Oh my God, would you please shut up?" So that was not a very good moment.
I'm trying to make Khan like wipe his eyes of tears. This is the best I can do, because that's all his
Khan has a claw for a hand.
Yeah, Khan does have a claw for his hand, which will come up in a minute as to why that's a limitation.
Not anatomically correct. No. And the people in Doosra Keval are not correct mentally. I was also not correct mentally after watching the show. It's just very exhausting and very boring. For those of you who are interested in putting yourself through Doosra Keval, it's on YouTube. And Prasar Bharati released these Shah Rukh Khan shows like 4 or 5 years ago on YouTube, and they went all out with the monetization, which means that every 5 minutes there's like a 5-minute goddamn ad for like Target or something, and so it's very annoying. There was also a few like St. Jude's Hospital ads, which I was like, oh yes, more
those
crying.
Are endless.
And there was more crying. So first, Shah Rukh's mom and sister are crying. Then the St. Jude's people are crying. And I was just like, I just came home from work. Can someone try to make me happy?
Nope. Not on YouTube.
But so basically the plot of Doosra Keval is that he goes to the city to like earn a living or whatever. And the whole show is told in flashbacks because we discovered that Keval has been murdered. So yes. So all the villagers and everybody is like remembering Keval, like how awesome he was and all of these like cool things that he was. And then at the end, they basically try to figure out who the murderer was. Like there's like a little police investigation happening parallel to it. So the concept is good. I do like the concept.
I love a mystery. So that I was like, I'm never going to watch that. And I was like, oh, maybe.
There's less mystery. There's just a lot of crying. a lot of hysterics, a lot of like hamara kya hoga, behen ki shadi kaise hogi, and all of that jazz. And then
I
at the
love
end,
it when dialogue is in simple enough Hindi that I understood exactly what you just said. I don't need
okay, you
subtitles.
don't even need audio to understand behen ki shadi kaise hogi. Okay, my sister-in-law is British. She does not speak a word of Hindi, but she loves Shah Rukh Khan. She loves Bollywood movies. She even watches movies without subtitles because she was like, I don't need them. I don't even need audio. I can tell from the facial expressions what's happening. So yeah, so it's like a weepy, and the technical quality is really bad. You can tell that they use really, like, they had no budget whatsoever. But the one thing I did enjoy about it was the fact that it's primarily shot in and around Delhi and in some villages near Delhi.
Mhm.
So it's very raw and it's very like truthful to how it is. I mean, this is 1989 Delhi, but some things never change, and it really looks very normal. Like they go to the cassette store, they go to the electronics store, there's the fruit and vegetable vendors, and it's not polished and clean. Because one of my beefs with Indian TV serials, and I have many beefs with Indian TV shows, I don't even watch Indian TV, but Indian TV shows are so polished and they're all shot
Mhm.
in these studios in Mumbai. So they'll say that the show is set in this city, but you can't tell at all because it's all interiors, and the way they're dressed, everybody's dressed in the same way and everyone's makeup's the same. So it's like, oh, I'll take your word for it that this is Allahabad, but it sure don't look it. So that's kind of the only good thing I can say about Doosra Keval. I will say that in the brief flashes that Keval has, because he has this romance happening with this really cute girl called Meeta, who has no screen presence whatsoever, but she's cute. Yeah, he's so adorable in those scenes. Like she's at the pani puri wala and he shows up and he's like, she doesn't have change because she's a rich girl. So she's trying to pay for her pani puri with a 500 rupee note, which only a rich girl in a Bollywood, whatever, would do. And then Shah Rukh is like, I'll pay for her change. And I was like, ooh. And then he wants to take her out to tea, but he said, do you think you're going to order pastries? And she said, oh, yeah, I'd love to order pastries. And he's like, please don't. I don't have money. He's
That's
like,
cute.
just have tea. And she was like, well, then why did you ask me if I'm going to eat it? Because he was like, I just wanted to know. He's so cute in those scenes. You can definitely
Aw.
see the flashes of the Shah Rukh that he became later. But the show itself is a drag. And I did it for science. And I also did it for our podcast. So I do deserve pats on the back for getting through all that drivel. What about you? I know you watched Fauji.
I
So
watched
tell us about
Fauji, which
that.
is a show that obviously I've heard a lot about over the years. I'd actually seen a couple episodes a few years ago while visiting another similarly Shah Rukh obsessed person in Texas. And she had them on DVD, maybe.
Mm.
But there is a terrible upload on YouTube, although from what you're saying, it sounds like all versions of Fauji look terrible, with the subtitles embedded.
Apparently, there's Fauji on Amazon Prime, but I found that out too late. Is it
Yeah.
actually on Prime?
I don't have Prime right now, so I did not
Oh,
investigate. I don't know if it's true in all countries or what. So I have a couple things to say about Fauji from the start. One, he is absolutely the best thing about it. I'm trying not to look back with, bias, but he stands out. The camera loves him. He is giving it everything, but not in a too much kind of way. He is the most charismatic person. He, from what I could tell, is the only good actor on the show.
yeah.
Most people in this show are flat out terrible. A few of them are kind of like okay, but a lot of them seem like they've never acted even in a school play before. It's really badly cast.
They're very wooden.
Yeah, very wooden, and beyond just sort of I'm in the military way. Like it's really
Yeah.
bad. Two, I am not pro-military in any way. So going into this, I kind of thought I might have a hard time getting myself over the hurdle of caring about people who have chosen to be in an elite
Right.
commando training. But I actually thought the bones of this story are really good. I was really
Yeah.
interested in what happened. I felt like they chose drama that was compelling, yet also seemed completely believable for the setting of the story. So it was like reasonable yet engaging, which is a really interesting line to watch. And when I started realizing that, I thought about how unusual it is to find something that is reasonable yet fully engaging to me and like full
Yeah.
of some surprises and things like that. then third, this show is bad. And yet it is the best Indian television show I have ever seen, because as much as I love Indian film, I really intensely dislike Indian television that I have seen, which is, I've watched some from here. I've watched some like while visiting India. Oh, if I can't, I hate Indian television. I hate everything
It
I've ever
is,
seen
to
on
use
it.
the Bethism, which I'm trying to make popular, by the way, Bethism trademark. To use the Bethism, Indian television is shriekingly hideous.
It is shriekingly hideous, and emphasis on the shriek. Like, it is very loud. It is repetitive. It is, when you turn on the news, there's 10 streams of information coming at once. Everyone is shouting over each other. It's horrible. If you've never seen it, please don't. It's horrible. As an American person, there's a lot of terrible American television too, but I've never in anywhere in the world seen as consistently awful television as in India. I don't know why. I don't know if the movies drain all the talent.
I
I
feel
don't
like
know.
we do
It's
have
terrible.
a lot of blame to place at Ekta Kapoor's feet, by the way, because until Ekta Kapoor started making her soaps, Kyoki Saas Bhi Bahu Thi and this other show that I think it was called Kahani Ghar Ghar Ki. I haven't watched these shows, but until she did that, Indian television was actually really good. And the weird thing is that during the 80s, it was the exact opposite of what you're saying. So in the 80s, you pretty much only had Doordarshan, which was the Indian television thing. And they had all these incredibly talented people from the
Yeah.
National School of Drama and FTI and all these people. And so Indian television back then was really good, and films were terrible. Like in the 80s, Indian cinema nosedived and television became the good medium. So it almost seems as if you can't have good TV and good cinema in India at the same time. You kind of got to pick your medium. But I've watched a lot of Doordarshan shows, again, via video cassettes that our uncle used to bring in Nigeria. But I watched a lot of Doordarshan TV shows, and they were actually really good. There were a lot of like literary based shows. There were a lot of TV shows that were based on like famous novels by like Dostoevsky or, stuff like that. Really intellectual, good stuff, and not boring at all, like really good. But then I think with globalization and then with the opening up of Indian markets, I think we started getting a lot of American soaps like, Bold and the Beautiful and Dynasty and Dallas. And then they started aping all of that. We actually had like a household help person that my mom had. She lived in the slums and she named her daughter Caroline because she was so impressed by Bold and the Beautiful.
Love it. I love that Bold and the
I was
Beautiful
like,
is
what?
one of the ones that stands out. And it's so interesting when shows go from one country to another, like how the markets change and like what's popular. Because that I don't think was considered one of the sort of premiere ones in the US as it was airing,
Right.
that I recall. I'm not a soap person, so I don't really know, but
No.
that my impression when I started finding out about it being popular in other parts of the world, I was like,
It was so popular, by the way, that I vaguely remember this because, I have the kind of memory, well, I will never remember anything important. Like you could ask me my social security number, I have no idea. But I can tell you some really useless trivia. It's a superpower. But Sushmita Sen, I think in either her Miss India pageant question or her Miss Universe, one of the big pageants that she was in, that she won, she was asked about what she likes to watch, and she had said Bold and the Beautiful, which can you imagine saying that today? I mean, imagine someone asks you, Beth, what do you like to watch in your spare time? And you're like, oh, I love Dynasty. People will be like, okay, she questionable.
I mean, you could, but you'd have to give some sort of, because of its social critique of
Or science.
Or maybe, I don't know. I don't know anything about what pageant people do, but yeah, I feel like you'd have to kind of layer that answer a bit or spin it as a, like, I'm so like down home, simple girl that this is, I don't know. Yeah. So Fauji is, if you haven't seen it, I would actually say, I think it's worth a watch.
Yeah.
But it is literally hard to watch because of how terrible the quality of the transfer is and everything. I was reading an article on the print about it, and they're interviewing people involved with it. They talk about how expensive it was.
It was a very expensive show to produce, apparently.
So, I mean, I'm not meaning to be rude, but where did the money go? Because they're not hiring top-notch actors. It's not the sets. It's not the like army effects and everything. Like,
I read some interviews of Amina Sherwani. She is the person who plays Kiran Kochhar, the war correspondent in the show. And apparently she ended up marrying the cinematographer, who is the son of the producer and director of the show, Colonel Kapoor. So she was very involved in the making of the show. And she said that they had a pretty big budget. And even then, they were really scrounging around for money. And they almost got into trouble because they had asked for some like model guns or whatever, and then they made like these casts of them to use for the show. And then she was detained by Delhi police because they were like, why are you walking around with a sack full of guns?
Which is a very good question. More
good
people should ask that question.
Apparently they had made some TV stuff like commercials for Delhi police, so the Delhi police commissioner knew them, and he was like, no, they're just these like actor people.
I would like to talk about her for a minute. So one of the struggles with this show for me is it's a very male world, right? And they put some women in it. There's like comedy Bengali couple, auntie uncle Bengalis, who just want to, the wife is long suffering and wants to go back to Calcutta. There's the daughter of the like shop owner, Parvati, who is, they're trying to marry her off and she wants to marry someone else. There's Shah Rukh's love interest, who literally falls from a plane into his lap, which is pretty great. She's a doctor.
Parachute.
She's an army doctor, and she's a higher rank than he is, which is kind of interesting. They don't do as much with that as they could.
Older than him by 2 years.
Yeah. And then there's Kiran Kochhar, who is a plucky journalist, which I feel like is a very standard way to put a woman into a setting that is mostly men otherwise. And I'm not a really big fan of plucky journalist at this point, but also we don't really see her journalisming a whole lot. And I would love to hear from people who are proper journalists, of which we know quite a few, like, I don't know what she's doing. And in the show, she's a general's daughter. So she's clearly just like she's around. And I know that I'm supposed to like her, and I wanted to like her, but I just found her really, really grating for reasons I can't really articulate. And she's in a will they, won't they sort of relationship with Shah Rukh's brother. We won't spoil that connection for anyone who doesn't know the show, but I don't know. I give them some points for trying. And especially, this is 13 episodes. Each one is about 22 minutes long or something. So there's not a lot of real estate here. So I thought they did okay with the ladies, the TV ladies in this show. But and the men, for the most part, do feel fairly dimensional for the real estate that they have, especially given that they also dedicate part of each episode to some kind of training. Of their commando training, which is not very interesting in my opinion.
I was watching it at work and like during my lunch break. And so I was like, every time he would come to the commando training, I was like, yeah, I'm going to forward this. Because they're 20-minute episodes. So I was like, I can get through this like during my lunch. So I'm like eating my food and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to see this.
And I think the training sequences are one of the places where you see kind of the problems with the budget and the problems they had about where to film this and things like that. So it really does look like someone's backyard. Like this is just some park with trees in it, you know. So I kind of wish they'd trimmed back on that a little bit, but I understand that it would have probably been something new for television at the time, or at least interesting, probably new to a lot of viewers. I'm not saying I think it's realistic or not. I have no idea. Again, kind of looks like the ropes.
Never done a commando training course, Beth. I'm so disappointed.
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you, you know. It looks like the ropes course at your local public park, you know. But again, like they really were trying something. I think I did care about what happened to a lot of these people. And in the end, which we won't spoil, it takes a very different tone. It's like one show for the first 9 episodes, and then they go to war, and the tone changes quite a bit. And the end is really, really different. Which I thought, you know, I can see why people would have been compelled to watch this, especially with, even if there had been more choices on television, which, you know, those of us who watched TV in the 80s in lots of parts of the world, we remember what this is like. Like I grew up with 4 channels. So yeah, I get it. And I get why Shah Rukh launched out of it. His character is the most interestingly written. He's really good. there's one scene I want to call out in particular, which is a scene where his friends have, I think, basically bet him that something will not happen before he counts to 10. And the way he draws out counting to 10, it feels ad-libbed. I don't know if it is, but it feels very theater kid, having fun with this. And he knows the camera is going to stick with him. He knows everyone will stick with him. And he really milks it. And it's very, very funny. That's episode 3, I think, or something like that. If people want to watch just that, they should. So it's a great star turn. I totally get it.
I was reading a lot of the trivia about Fauji, and I read that the casting for the show had apparently already been finished, and Shah Rukh and his mom and sister were looking for a new house to rent because they needed to downsize. And the guy who was selling the house or renting the house to them happened to be the son-in-law of Colonel Kapoor, who was making the show. And he was like, "What do you do?" And Shah Rukh was like, "Well, I'm in theater." And he said, "Well, my father-in-law is making a TV show for Doordarshan, and it's called Fauji, and you should go talk to him." So Shah Rukh just showed up at the sets of Fauji on the first day of shooting, and he just wanted to make contacts or whatever. I mean, this is how much this man has struggled. He has not become the biggest superstar in the world by just sitting on his ass, y'all. Not that anyone thought that, but he showed up at the Fauji sets, and then Colonel Kapoor was going to give him 2 lines, but then they discovered that the cinematographer who ended up marrying Meena Shirvani, they were like, the cinematographer can't do the role of Abhimanyu Rai and be the cinematographer. You have to pick. So he decided to be the cinematographer instead. So then they had an opening for the role of Abhimanyu Rai. And so he was like, "Do you want to do it?" And apparently the lead of the show was supposed to be the older brother.
Which you can see in the structure that remains. They do spend a lot of time
good.
with him.
I like him.
Okay.
I thought he had screen presence. And I mean, maybe if they'd given him a better written character, he could have done something with it. But then they were like, "Okay, this guy is really good. The camera really loves him. So let's make him the sort of the star of the show." And apparently this is what I've just heard, hearsay from people who did grow up in India during that era, is that they would look forward to Fauji airing because Shah Rukh Khan became such a giant,
I believe it,
thing between the young people. He was like a heartthrob, which he's so cute. And I was telling my husband yesterday that there's no grooming. They're in fatigues all day. The camera is, I mean, it's horrible. The principal photography, the cinematography and everything is so poor. He has this unruly haircut, which, by the way, you can't be in the army and have that haircut because I come from a military family.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, I was like, no, but it's okay. And despite all that, you can't look away from him, and he knows he's cute. That's the other thing, right? He has this gleam in his eyes where he's like, "I know I'm cute. I know you want to watch me." And it was like, that is so adorable.
Can we talk for just a split second even about his eyelashes?
I did not notice them.
Oh my God. Our favorite Shashi Kapoor has beautiful eyelashes. And I have never really noticed that about Shah Rukh before, but I was just like, whoa. So I don't know if they mascaraed him up or what, but I doubt it. I don't think anyone's really wearing much makeup on this show.
No. This is something I've noticed, Beth. This is one of the great inequalities of life, but the best eyelashes are given to boys.
It's true.
Yes.
And
many men that I know have gorgeous eyelashes. Meanwhile, I can't get my mascara to even do anything.
I don't know if the shape of his face changed just a bit in the couple of years, and there's something about his very young structure that makes them I don't know, but it's really it was really but yeah, he's really delightful in this. I don't love his character is fine. I don't love him, but the performance is really good. And you absolutely
Did you hear that? Did you notice the joke though about the noses?
Yes.
That was funny. They did a little montage.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember now who said this, but one of them, because I was watching it during my lunch break, but someone said I think journalist girl.
It's the love interests.
Yeah. She says to Dr. Girl, my guy is more handsome than yours. And she's like, no, mine's cuter. And then she was like, well, the only thing is my guy has a beak nose. And then she says, well, so does my guy. And then they do a little montage of the two brothers and you see Shah Rukh's nose. And it's I thought that was funny. Yeah. I think that's one of the things I enjoyed about Fauji, in that it's humorous and it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Agreed. But also seriously enough. right? It's
Yes.
not flippant about
No.
war,
It's
about
quite earnest. Yeah.
the peril that these young men are in. And I like that so I forget who this character is called, but when they actually go to war, the commanding guy, who's a generation or two older than they are, he just kind of is sitting in a room, like looking at a map, being like, yeah, send them in. And I really like that contrast of the brass who forget what it's like to be on the front line or whatever. And they don't really like pin a rose on this or anything, but they let it happen. And
Yeah.
I found that quite moving, actually.
Yeah. My grandfather actually, so I come from a long line of military people on my mother's side, and my grandfather fought in World War II, and he was
Wow.
on the Burma front, and he was
Wow.
actually a parachutist. So he used to parachute out of planes and stuff to deposit supplies. And he got shot in the trenches, and he had really bad PTSD. They used to call it shell shock syndrome.
Yep.
And he was treated in a military hospital for 6 months. And they gave him the most cutting edge treatment of that time for his shell shock syndrome, which was electrocution of the brain.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yes, but he recovered and he was fine. But he had that same sort of like sense of humor that I've noticed a lot of army people have, because I have like at least 6 or 7 army people on my mother's side, not just like actual army, but also like army engineers, army doctors, like lots and lots of people in the Indian army. And they all have this kind of like gallows humor. So I remember when I was little, my grandpa would be making tea or whatever, and he would just, he would say something, and my grandma would nag him like, well, did you forget to pay blah blah bill? And he was like, I did. And then she would get annoyed with him, and then he would just like look at me and he would say, it's the electrocution of the brain, makes me forget sometimes. And I'd be like, can you not talk about that?
Yeah.
It's very
Did your grandfather meet your grandmother by falling on her from a parachute
He's
mission?
not. It's
Oh,
so
that's too bad.
disappointing. I wish
You
he
should
had.
just
My grandma would
say
not
that.
have had time for that kind of tomfoolery, okay?
Correct.
My grandma would be like, no. She was a school teacher. She was not into all the tomfoolery. But so no, that did not happen. But yeah, it's a really cute show. And I have heard from people who are older than me and who grew up like actually in India. They said that they felt like Fauji was made for them, because at the time, first of all, you only had Doordarshan. And I don't think even DD Metro, which was the second TV station, I don't think even that had come out yet. And so you basically could only watch what was on Doordarshan, and so much of the programming would be taken up by news, and like the weather and stuff like that. And then the shows that were most popular were the mythologicals, basically Ramayana and Mahabharata. And there's a scene also in Fauji where I think Shah Rukh alludes to that, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't he say something like, well, Sundays are for Mahabharata or something like that? Yeah. So, I mean, not that the young people didn't watch those, they did, but Doordarshan at that time was either dominated with super cerebral stuff where they're making shows on like Mirza Ghalib and stuff like that, or it's like bows and arrows and flying things a la Ramayana and Mahabharata and stuff. So this was the first show that the youth felt like was made for them, where you have these people like giggling and laughing and concerned about their future and stuff like that. Did you get a little bit of a PG Woodhouse vibe too? I did.
So we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the absolutely insufferable character who keeps saying, I say, chaps, just for, as someone who, came into Indian English, did not grow up with it, the Englishness from a certain era that's in Indian English and some other things is always really interesting to me, because it's very different than the English I speak, or that the English I've encountered in Canada or in other places I've been and lived. Right. But that guy, like at first I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. And then I was like, oh, please stop. However, we all love a catchphrase from a show. So I get it, but I found him a bit much. Was I moved by his final appearance in the series? Yes, I was.
Yeah.
So no spoilers, but like, dang it, it worked on me.
But I like that scene where so his name is, I think, Varun Thakureshwar
He has like
Singh
5 names.
Chaudhary Parameshwar Singh Ji. I like
Uh-huh.
that's his like he
A
has a
lot of
moniker.
names.
Yeah, and he's at this party and he locks eyes with this pretty girl and he like goes up to her and he's like, "Hello." First he says to his friends, including Shahrukh, he's like, "I say chaps," and then he goes off towards this girl and then he's like, "Hello, I am Varuneshwar," blah 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 blah, and then she just looks at him with a face and she says, "Naam hai ya nazm? Is that a name or a poem?" And then he goes,
Great.
"Oh, you can call me Varun." It was cute. I like the little like romances, like
Mhm.
it felt cute and not over the top and annoying.
No.
I think the series definitely straddles this very fine line, as you said, about being like it's funny, but it's not flippant. And it's serious, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. And I feel like that's such a fine balance, and it's so hard to achieve, whether it's in television or cinema. Like you just have to be very like subtle and careful. And I think that they did that well. I also enjoyed the little outtakes that they had like with the bloopers, because I only
Yes.
associate that with modern times.
I know. That was cute. That was
Yeah,
cute.
so I was like, for them to have done these like outtakes and bloopers in 1989 during the credits, I thought that was kind of cool.
I also think that that may have been a response to, because I don't think they do it in the first couple episodes, right?
No,
So I
it's
think they were
later.
like, oh, Shah Rukh is popular. Let's put more of him in the show. So they slapped it under the credits at the end, but I'm all for it because it's very charming.
I think Shah Rukh Khan talked about it in an interview where he
Oh,
said that afterwards he would just be going around because he was still a struggling actor who hadn't made his big break in cinema yet, and he would be going around in Delhi on his motorbike, and people would point and go, "Abhimanyu Rai, Fauji, Fauji," like they didn't even know his name. And
can see
even in
why.
billing, like when you watch the show, he is third billed.
Yep.
And just it's this terrible photo of him, like three-quarter shot. He's just looking off in the distance, like, huh? And it just says Shah Rukh Khan, and I'm like, "Ee!"
He's very enjoyable in the show. And you don't even have to think like, oh, what if someone made a super cut of this and just put his bits in? Because most of it is him. Not all, but most, because they, they knew what they had there, and it's pretty great. At some point we probably will do a whole nepotism question episode. But
Yeah.
before we do, I just want to say there are people whose opinions I very much respect who talk about, or at least I understand them to be saying that nepotism has given us some great film stars. I'm like, yeah, sure. But the greatest
Who?
film
Hrithik
star,
Roshan? That's
the
it?
greatest film star is not at all a nepotism person. And also, you
No.
have no idea what you may not have gotten because people who are not connected didn't get a chance. And so that argument just holds absolutely no water with me whatsoever. And I think that
Oh
this is
yeah.
such we all know he's the famous example of the struggler who had no connections. But um,
Well, so
when you
is
really think
Madhuri,
about,
so is
yeah,
Aishwarya. Like
yeah,
my three favorites, which is Madhuri, Shah Rukh, Madhuri, and Aishwarya. And it's so sad to me that all of them are in the terrible movie called Devdas. But all three of them
which
are.
has a nice prediction in Fauji, because there's a scene where he's all lovelorn and being
Yes,
ridiculous. He gets up and leaves the room, and one of the other soldiers says, "Oh, that Dev does."
I
Like,
know. I took
oh,
a screenshot. I took a screenshot. I was
yeah,
like,
me too.
yes.
It's great. It's a very good show. It's a very good show. Also, someone says, doesn't someone says another film title in a dialogue, and I was like, oh, I forget what it was, but I
Could
don't
be,
think it
I'm
was one
not
of
sure.
his films. I can't remember, but it's all very good.
Yeah, I know. I get very, very irritated when people try to like defend nepotism
Me
because
too.
I'm like, not to go Kangna Ranaut on you, but y'all are talking some bullshit. So there was this lady just 1 or 2 days ago on Instagram, Victoria. She posted this whole thing about, you like all these Nepo products talk about how much they have to work and all of that. And like, y'all have the privilege and opportunity to work. There are people who aren't even getting an opportunity to work. I mean, look at Luck by Chance. That's one of the best movies that talks about,
Yeah.
the lack of opportunities. I mean, Shah Rukh Khan himself, like we would not have Shah Rukh Khan if the 80s had been as horrendously riddled with the Nepo products as contemporary times are, because he wouldn't
Mhm.
even have gotten his foot in the door.
I mean,
Um,
and the Nepo kids have the freedom to make mistakes, and I don't just mean like at the social level, like they have clout behind them to clear up, blind items or whatever. They have the luxury of being in a flop film and then getting to do it again, whereas a lot of people
didn't
don't.
Abhishek Bachchan do like 13 flops in a row or something like that? He did.
I do not know, but I believe it.
Yeah, like like they do keep getting chance after chance after chance after chance, and it doesn't matter if they, and if they struggle too bad, that's fine. They can just sit in daddy's office and manage film distribution or whatever. But for someone like, say, Shah Rukh, to come from a family where you don't have a father anymore, your mom is sick and she has cancer, you have a sister who needs a lot of care because she is very emotionally distraught because of the situation with the parents. He basically had like a time limit during which he had to prove himself, and if he didn't, he was going to have to go out and somehow earn his daily bread. So these are not opportunities that come lightly. Like, I just, yeah, every time someone tries to defend Nepo products, I just roll my eyes and I'm like, can you not? Because like, you don't want to see me getting mad at you. This is bullshit. Yeah, I know. I mean, just look at his I mean, I'm an unabashed Shah Rukh Khan fan, but we all know that Suhana is getting the red carpet out for her in the form of Archies. But I always feel like the Nepo products, they don't even work as hard because they don't have to. There's always a safety net. So I don't know. I mean, I'll probably watch Archies, but I don't have my like, the stakes just aren't high enough. So anyway, I don't know how we devolved into that, but yeah, we should probably do an episode on this, but I don't know what we would say because we're both like anti it. So
right, yeah. To find someone who's willing to defend this ridiculous system, but
no, then I will yell at them. We don't want me yelling at guests. I'll go Sunny Paji, which, by the way, Sunny Paji is a Nepo kid.
I mean, I enjoy it every now and then on Twitter, asking who's people's most egregious example of nepotism privilege is.
Who?
Well, I mean, boy, take your Udit Chopra obviously figures high on a lot of people's lists, but he's not really anything at this point.
No.
So it doesn't seem as annoying. Mine is
He's also
actually
used as an example, actually, by Nepo's
right
supporters, where they say, look, the system will kick you out if you don't have talent. Just look at Udit Chopra. And I was like, yes, the system kicked him out after how many opportunities that were given to him on silver platter? Don't at me.
I think that the worst example I can think of is actually Satyajit Ray's son, who is a director, but is he's so bad.
Really? I didn't even know Satyajit Ray had a son, and I didn't know he was. Does he make movies? Like, is he a director?
Mm-hmm. They're all Bengali, and they are terrible.
Really?
Now, granted, that's an awfully big set of shoes to fill. I'm sure I'm not saying it's easy to be a Nepo kid in certain ways necessarily, but no one's making you do this. Probably. So
no, you can go to college like the rest of us did, and you can study something, and you can actually go get a job, and we'll see how well you do when you don't have mommy and daddy holding your hand. But yeah, because I mean, I'm from Mumbai, and it's like every nice school, every nice college is full of film industry children. Like, it's so common in Mumbai, you don't even bat an eyelid. It's like, oh, that person is Babas, that person is like, I know a girl who dated Hrithik Roshan in college because he was at Sydenham College. I studied at Jai Hind College, they're like a stone's throw from each other. Like, we used to go to the Sydenham College canteen to eat food because our canteen had terrible food and theirs had good food. But I know a girl from Jai Hind College who was dating Hrithik Roshan briefly. He was not the Hrithik Roshan back then, but it was kind of like, that handsome guy is like Rakesh Roshan's son. So that was very like, okay, whatever. But they do have it very, very, very easy. So as much as I love Hrithik Roshan, I mean, look at the debut he got, right? Where his dad and his uncle, everyone's like, but I mean, he was really good, but still.
You brought up his uncle, and that makes me, I have to circle back to something on Fauji, which is the hideous music.
Oh, did you notice who it's by?
I sure did. It's Loy, as in Shankar Ehsaan Loy. And he did one show's worth of music and they reuse it. I don't have the right words. Repetitive does not do justice to how frequently this music, all the music cues are reused. And it's really terrible synthesizer. And it's just, I mean, I'm not a composer. I've taken 10 years of piano lessons. I have quite a bit of musical training for an amateur. I mean, have him sit down for 5 more minutes and make up a couple other things with 3 chords in it. Like, oh, it's just dreadful. However, it is an earworm. I have been humming it to myself for the last 48 hours. So
It is catchy, but it's bad. But you know what's another? So, okay, this is an example. I love when my fandoms collide. So, have you ever watched this show called Outlander?
no, but I certainly know what it is.
I love it. Well, I have a love-hate relationship with it now because there's things in it that are making me rape as a plot device is really one of the most egregious things
That's
on the
why
planet.
I have never watched it for that exact reason. I'm not going to do that.
And yes, it is very much at this point. I am hanging on to my Outlander fandom with a thread. I think I'm just going to keep rewatching Outlander season 1 because the other seasons have been giving me agita. But anyway, so the song, the title song, not the title song, the credits song, which is Over the Sea to Sky. Sing Me a Song. That song is the tune at the end of the credits of Fauji that's being played on the bagpipes. Because I heard the first episode, and I'm one of those people that I just forward through the credits, and I heard a snatch, and I was like, wait, that sounds like Sing Me a Song. And then I rewound it, and then I watched it again. I was like, holy shit, it's the same thing,
Yeah.
but in bagpipes. But of course, it is an old Scottish ditty, and it's being used in military. But I was like, ooh, fandoms colliding.
Here's
So I
one.
enjoyed that.
The last
What?
time I was at Tagore's house in Calcutta, they have music playing, and he obviously wrote songs, and one of the songs came on, and I was like, that's Old Lang Syne, but in Bengali. I was like, like, he did not write that.
I love how you, by the way, just like put that. You were like, the last time I was at
I
Tagore's
know.
house,
I'm sorry. I'm
I'm
sorry.
undone. I'm a lot less highbrow than you, so my conversation's usually like, the last time I was at Trader Joe's.
Yeah, but then they hear what I say, but then they hear how I say it, and like, she's not highbrow. She can't pronounce anything. So it evens out.
Nice. Oh, another little bit of trivia that I discovered. One of the actors is the nephew. Gaurav Chopra is the nephew of Vidhu Vinod Chopra.
Yep.
I'm
I saw
struggling
that.
though to remember who Gaurav Chopra was in the group of
Is he
people.
I Say Chaps? He might be I Say Chaps.
He might be. I say, chaps. He might be him. And then the guy who played Yasin, however you pronounce his name, he apparently had like a really big career in like supporting roles,
I
but
looked him
his
up too.
filmography
Yeah.
is pretty long.
The Chopra is I Say Chaps.
I say chaps. Okay. Yeah. So he's with Vinod Chopra's nephew.
I'm glad you brought up that character because on a serious note, one of the things that stood out to me about Fauji was there are no Muslim characters at all for the longest of times.
Austin,
right. And then when one appears, we won't spoil, but I was like, I don't clearly know enough about 80s media representations of different communities within India, but I was like, that's something I would expect now. But I kind of thought it might be a little more even-handed then. Nope.
Right.
Nope. At least not in this commando unit within the army. I don't know, but I was surprised and disappointed by that.
Yeah. What else? I think we've mentioned everything. You've mentioned Shah Rukh's eyelashes. I've mentioned his beak nose. We've given people all the trivia.
One more. The dimples.
Oh, the dimples were very good.
Such a baby face.
The camera really did love him. And after watching the show, I completely understand why Hema Malini picked up the phone. Thank you so much, Hema Malini. You gave the world Isha Deol, which I'm very angry about, but you did give us Shah Rukh, so I'm happy about that. So one good turn,
Yeah, the one outweighs the other by a long shot, I would say. Because you can mostly ignore Isha Deol if you want to. So
this is going to sound so mean and petty, but people should be used to my pettiness by now. I'm a petty person. What can I say? There is this Coffee with Karan episode where Hema Malini and Jaya Bachchan had come together. So it's really, really old. Yeah. It's when Isha Deol was still in like the film industry. And during the rapid fire, I think Karan Johar asks Hema Malini, he says that, during your time, you were like the number one actress or whatever. And like you were the dream girl and all these things. And then he's like, who do you think in the new generation, like current generation, is going to make it to number one? Now, bear in mind, we had people like Madhuri, Aishwarya, top of their game at this time, okay? Gotta love Hema Malini's confidence. She goes, my daughter, Isha. And Karan Johar is like, oh, yeah, sure. And she's like, my daughter, Isha, she will definitely be number one. And I'm like, okay, nobody else thinks that but you.
You know how Southern Americans can say things and get away with these really mean comments that sound sweet because of their
Bless
accents?
your
That's when you
heart.
go, bless their heart.
Yeah. I was like, it's a mother's love.
That was clearly never going to happen. I don't hate her. I don't have any use for her. I don't care. And she's in films of an era where I'm like, those were crap at the time and they've not aged
Tushar
well either.
Kapoor. She had a hit pair with Tushar Kapoor. That does not
Right.
bode well for anyone's
No.
career. But you know who is very disappointing to me these days? And it's Sunny Deol's son. Oh Lord.
Bless their hearts.
Sunny Deol keeps producing movies for him, and Dharmendra keep coming on all the shows to promote their son. And I watch those episodes only because I love Sunny Paji and I watch it for Dharam. But I'm like, just let it go. Your son's never going to be a star. He has the personality of a biscuit. Like, I have a pack of digestive biscuits in my fridge, and they have more personality than.
And you don't mean like not the chocolate covered kind, the really plain kind.
No, yeah. The plain ones with like bran in them. So I was like, it's never going to happen. And the funny thing is, like, I feel like the Deols, I understand why they're promoting him so much and they go on all these shows, but all it does is show you how bad he is, because you have Dharmendra at his age, like he's in his late 80s and he's still full of all these like cool anecdotes and he's funny and he has all this like garam dharam charm. He's so adorable. And then you have Karan Deol and he's like a little mouse in front of him. And I'm like, you're not doing your grandson any favors. You need to not come to these shows. You need him to be by himself. Because you see Dharam, you see Sunny, and then you see Karan Deol. Yeah. But yeah, no, go get a degree, go get a job. Do what the rest of us plebs do. But yeah. Okay. And go ahead. I feel like you have to say,
I feel like that's a perfectly good note to stop on. Like, we've hit the bottom of the conversations when we've gotten to the third generation of Deols, like, end scene.
But Beth, if you're friends with me long enough, you know that every conversation eventually leads to the Deols.
Oh, no, that's fine. It's just this particular person. We've reached the end, because we could obviously talk about Dharmendra for forever and Sunny once I learned some more, like.
Yeah, like we were hiking the other day and I don't even know what happened. I don't know what my husband said, but someone jogged past us and it reminded me of Sunny Deol's movie Yateem. And I was like, do you remember that scene in Yateem where Sunny Deol is jogging? And my husband is like, no, I do not. I'm like, okay, never mind.
Just me then. Okay.
just me being a Pachi fan. Okay. All right. So on that note, we hope that you guys enjoyed going down memory lane and parachuting down memory lane with us. If you are interested, I would recommend watching. If you're interested, I would recommend watching Fauji. We both saw it on YouTube and the print was horrendous, but I've heard rumors that it's like on Amazon Prime. I don't know. Maybe that print is better. I would not recommend watching Doosra Keval. There are a few clips on YouTube of Doosra Keval where Shah Rukh is romancing the character Meeta, and those are actually really cute. So if you want to see those clips to see how he romanced back in the day, then those are worth watching. But the show itself is terrible. I will probably also watch Circus at some point because I'm a masochist. But I don't expect it to be any good. Anyway, so thank you for joining us on the I Love Shah Rukh Khan podcast. And if you have any comments, we would love to hear them. If you have any criticisms, we don't want to hear them because we're Shah Rukh Khan fans or whatever. No, I'm just kidding. But like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. And we will be back next week with another episode, which we promise we're not going to do every episode on Shah Rukh Khan. So please don't give up on us, but indulge us a little bit. All right. Well, thank you for watching Filmi Ladies. Bye.
Goodbye.